1644 local time. 3 $2.2 billion Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, USS Gonzalez, USS Bulkley, and USS Nitze hold a rigid, synchronized blockade line across the jagged throat of the Strait of Hormuz. Inside their sterile, blue-lit combat information centers, the absolute supremacy of the Aegis combat system dictates the maritime reality. But at this precise second, the electromagnetic spectrum fractures. Without a single radio warning or the preceding buzz of surveillance drones, the AN/SPY-1D phased array radars on all three warships simultaneously paint a violent anomaly. 31 distinct thermal blooms erupt from three geographically isolated launch points: Bandar Abbas to the north, Keshim Island at the center, and Larak Island to the south. These are not standard patrols. They are 31 IRGC fast attack craft, constructed from low observable composites, screaming over the darkening swells at a relentless 55 knots. They are not maneuvering for position. They are locked onto strict intercept vectors. This is not a demonstration of presence. It is a mathematical countdown, exactly 8 minutes and 14 seconds, designed to shatter American naval doctrine on the 47th anniversary of the Revolutionary Guard. The lethality of this swarm isn't in its weapons, but its geometry. To effectively seal the strait, the three American destroyers are spaced exactly 19 nautical miles apart. Against a conventional threat, this offers optimal radar overlap. Against a 55-knot swarm, 19 miles is the exact distance where the doctrine of mutual support goes to die. The US Navy relies on cooperative engagement capability, the ability to share data and shoot for one another. But while data moves at light speed, an ESSM interceptor only moves at Mach 4. Across a 19-mile gap, the flight time makes cross-corridor rescue mathematically impossible. By splitting their 31 boats into three isolated vectors, 11, 10, and 10, the IRGC hasn't just attacked the fleet, they've completely decoupled it. The network is severed by physics. Each billion-dollar warship is now a solitary entity forced to solve its own survival equation. One ship versus 10 targets. 10 targets bleeding, a single, finite magazine. The IRGC doesn't need to sink all three ships to win the day. They only need a single fiberglass hull to slip through the math, touch American steel, and deliver the ultimate geopolitical image. While the southern corridor collapses into illuminator bandwidth chaos, the northern and central sectors operate with the absolute precision of a mechanical assembly line. In the combat information centers of the USS Gonzalez, North and USS Bulkley Center, the tactical teams face a combined 21 targets. Utilizing the advantage of open water, unobstructed by littoral clutter, the AN/SPY-1D phased array radars on both destroyers maintain optimal resolution. The 11 craft cutting into the northern vector and the 10 charging the center are painted with unforgiving clarity on the tactical displays. In the northern corridor, the USS Gonzalez's fire control team establishes strict fire discipline. The Aegis system calculates trajectories for each target, allocating exactly one missile per craft to maximize magazine preservation. From the Mk-41 vertical launch cells, RIM 162 ESSMs clear the rails in perfectly staggered rhythmic intervals. The sky fractures with wide exhaust trails, converting 5-knot machines into expanding clouds of composite debris and burning diesel. Simultaneously, in the central axis, the USS Bulkley synchronizes its fire network. Confronting 10 direct approach targets, the ship's tactical computer rapidly clears the outer ring threats using ESSMs. As the surviving craft breach the 5 nautical mile perimeter, the defensive systems of both destroyers simultaneously shift their engagement parameters, from guided missiles to kinetic gunnery. The Mk-45 5-inch gun mounts on the bows of the Gonzalez and Bulkley initiate their autoloader cycles. At this range, a 1-kilogram projectile traveling at Mach 2.5 requires only a single ballistic calculation to penetrate a stealth hull. Target locked. Ballistic data exported. Fire. In exactly 6 minutes and 14 seconds, the synchronized firepower of the USS Gonzalez and USS Bulkley pulverizes all 21 fast attack craft. No wasted movements, no excess ammunition expended. Solving the defensive equation in both the northern and central corridors generates the most invaluable resource on the battlefield: a time surplus. The northern radar scope is completely clear. The tactical crew of the USS Gonzalez has exactly 120 seconds of idle processing time, with the 5-inch gun system standing by for new coordinates, while the southern destroyer continues to struggle at the threshold of survival. Masked by the jagged littoral clutter of the coastline, 10 Iranian fast-attack crafts surge toward the destroyer. Radar waves slam into the rock faces and bounce back, flooding the AN/SPY-1D arrays with a storm of false returns. To guarantee a kill through this chaotic electronic noise, Nitze's combat system overrides standard doctrine. It doubles its expenditure rate. The Mk-41 vertical launch systems erupt continuously, ripple-firing RIM 162 ESSM Block I interceptors in a desperate shoot-shoot sequence. 4 composite boats are brutally ripped apart, reduced to expanding fireballs at the outer defensive ring. But 6 survive the barrage. Still pushing 55 knots, they cross the critical 8 nautical mile threshold. At exactly 8 miles, the swarm triggers a lethal kinetic trap. Concealed launch tubes on the fast attack craft blast open, simultaneously unleashing 6 Nasr, 1 anti-ship cruise missiles. The weapons immediately dive to sea-skimming altitude, hugging the crests of the swells as they accelerate to Mach 0.8, tracking dead center for Nitze's waterline. This is not a kill strike, it is an algorithmic chokehold. The 9,000-ton destroyer has 96 VLS cells. It is nowhere near empty on physical ammunition. Instead, it hits a fatal wall of illuminator bandwidth. Because the ship relies on semi-active ESSM Block I interceptors, the defensive missiles demand continuous, dedicated terminal guidance from the destroyer's 3 SPG-62 radar illuminators. Faced with 6 sea-skimming warheads closing at high subsonic speed, the Aegis computer ruthlessly calculates its survival priorities. Airborne missiles instantly outrank surface craft. The system abandons the boats. It redirects 100% of its radar illumination capacity, rapidly time-sharing the 3 SPG-62 beams at their absolute maximum cyclic rates to paint the incoming Nasr 1S. The defensive response is mathematically flawless. 6 ESSMs intersect 6 Nasr 1S in a rapid, staggered sequence of mid-air detonations, showering the ocean with burning shrapnel and fuel. But the interception demands a cost. A temporary, localized blindness. By monopolizing the mid-range fire control network, the IRGC creates an uncontested lane. Completely ignored by the Aegis system, the 6 stealth boats tear through the 8-mile mark unscathed. Inside the CIC, the posture shifts violently from digital defense to raw mechanical evasion. Hard to port. 4 General Electric gas turbines roar to maximum thermal output. The massive destroyer violently lists, carving a whitewater hydrodynamic wake as it forces itself to a flank speed of 31 knots. Yet, naval physics remains absolute. A 3-1-knot steel behemoth cannot outrun a 5-5-knot composite wolfpack. The spatial gap collapses, feeding the untouched swarm directly into the ship's final desperate perimeter. Now, the spatial gap violently compresses. The 8-mile buffer evaporates. At exactly 4 nautical miles, the engagement geometry shifts from guided missiles to raw ballistic trajectories. The Mk-45 5-inch lightweight gun mount on the forward deck assumes command of the defense grid. The ship's ballistic computers generate a rapid-firing solution, calculating the necessary deflection to compensate for both the destroyer's hard-to-port evasion and the swarm's 5-5-knot approach vector. The mechanical autoloader cycles. 70-pound kinetic projectiles leave the barrel at Mach 2.5. The sheer concussive force of the impacts systematically shatters the 3 leading composite hulls, converting them into dispersed fields of sinking fiberglass. The swarm is halved. 3 craft remain. At this proximity, the surviving Iranian crews initiate a pre-calculated anti-radiation protocol. They do not attempt to aim their weapons at the American warship. Instead, they elevate their unguided 107mm multiple rocket launch pods to a steep 4-5-degree angle. The remaining payload is ripple-fired directly into the airspace between the swarm and the destroyer, synchronized with the sudden deployment of multispectral smoke grenades designed to blind optical tracking arrays. The 107mm rockets airburst simultaneously. Thousands of jagged steel fragments violently scatter, creating a dense, slowly descending kinetic curtain, a shrapnel wall suspended over the water. As the 3 untouched fast attack craft breach the critical 2 nautical mile perimeter, the destroyer's absolute last line of defense, the Phalanx close-in weapon system, automatically wakes up. The Phalanx utilizes a Ku-band radar to detect and track high-speed, close-range targets. However, confronted with a massive, floating cloud of metallic debris and multispectral particulate, The radar's processing capacity is instantaneously saturated with false returns. The algorithm, overwhelmed by the extreme density of radar cross-sections falling through the air, registers the metallic cloud as an imminent multi-vector threat. The 6-barrel 20mm Gatling gun roars to life. It pours a high-density stream of tungsten rounds into the upper atmosphere, aggressively shredding harmless, free-falling metal fragments while completely ignoring the stealth holes slicing through the water directly below it. Recognizing an unresolved targeting discrepancy, the Phalanx's internal fire control algorithm triggers a hard-coded failsafe. It automatically cuts the ammunition feed to the rotary cannon to flush its oversaturated memory cache. To clear the background clutter and re-establish a stable track on the actual surface threats, the system must execute a mandatory reacquisition cycle. The computational time required for this protocol is exactly 6 seconds. In standard naval warfare, a 6-second processing delay is an acceptable operational margin. But against a composite swarm burning through the final geometric distance at 55 knots, a 6-second reset mathematically guarantees a hull breach. For those 360 frames, the terminal automated defense grid of the billion-dollar warship is reduced to a silent, powerless block of rotating metal. At the 2-nautical-mile perimeter, the tactical equation deteriorates further. The USS Nitze's Phalanx CIWS remains trapped in its 6-second memory flush protocol. Of the 3 remaining Iranian craft, one is severely degraded by the falling 107mm shrapnel curtain. Its propulsion system ruptures, throwing the burning composite hull into an uncontrolled flat spin. Yet, it does not sink. Refusing to abort the engagement, the Iranian crew transitions to manual ballistics. A 12.7mm D-Sheshk heavy machine gun opens fire from the rotating deck. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds rake the superstructure of the American destroyer. The kinetic impacts hammer relentlessly against the Kevlar-reinforced bulkheads shielding the SPY-1 radar arrays. While the ship's physical armor holds, the deafening acoustics of heavy-caliber impacts inject extreme operational pressure directly into the enclosed Combat Information Center. Meanwhile, the 2 fully intact stealth boats push past the spinning wreckage, locking their vectors dead center on the destroyer's flank. Time to impact drops below 60 seconds. The Phalanx system indicator still flashes its reacquisition warning. A hull breach appears mathematically inevitable. However, the IRGC planners fail to account for a critical variable: dynamic spatial distortion. By executing a continuous, hard-to-port evasion over the last 15 minutes, the USS Nitze inadvertently warps the battlefield's coordinate grid. The distance between the northern blockade anchor, USS Gonzalez, and the southern anchor, USS Nitze, is no longer 19 nautical miles. The spatial gap has compressed to exactly 11 nautical miles. In the northern corridor, the Tactical Action Officer, TAO, aboard the USS Gonzalez observes this geometric intersection. Having systematically eradicated the assigned targets, the Northern Command possesses a luxury the Nitze does not: 120 seconds of idle processing time. Without requesting higher authorization, the TAO initiates a manual fire control override. On the bow of the USS Gonzalez, the Mk-45 5-inch gun mount violently slews 180 degrees to face the southern horizon. The ballistic computer inputs the coordinates, compensates for wind shear, and executes the firing sequence. A 31-kilogram kinetic projectile leaves the barrel at Mach 2.5. It arcs silently across the Strait of Hormuz, trading kinetic energy for altitude before beginning its terminal descent. For exactly 22 seconds of flight time, the fate of the USS Nitze hangs entirely in the ballistic trajectory. Impact. The 5-inch round strikes the engine compartment of the lead southern boat with surgical precision, vaporizing it in a sudden thermal bloom. This cross-corridor sniper shot does not wipe out the entire swarm, but it surgically eliminates the multispectral smoke generator and the primary source of the radar clutter. This single variable shift buys the USS Nitze exactly 11 seconds of uncontested electromagnetic space. It is the exact margin required. The Phalanx Ku-band radar successfully flushes its corrupted cache, cuts through the dissipating interference, and achieves a solid, undisputed lock. The Gatling gun roars. A stream of depleted uranium saws the final fast attack craft in half at a point-blank range of 340 meters. Plumes of seawater and pulverized composite wash over the destroyer's forward deck. Inside the CIC, the tactical radar screen returns to absolute zero. By 1652, the strait returns to a sterile calm. 22 IRGC craft burn. 9 float dead. 0 American hull breaches. The Revolutionary Guard spent 47 years engineering the perfect asymmetric trap. They flawlessly calculated radar horizons, bandwidth, saturation, and the exact 6-second blind spot of an automated American defense grid. It was a digital masterpiece meant to humiliate a superpower on live television. But they made one fatal analog mistake. You can jam a frequency, you can overwhelm an algorithm, but you cannot DDoS a 70-pound block of kinetic steel traveling at Mach 2.5. Happy 47th anniversary. Thanks for the target practice. Now, if you want to continue following the strategic strikes of Operation Epic Fury, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next update.